hello to everyone watching this video. I'm Suzanne from UNHCR, and we are very honored to have 3 guests from beyond the raging sea here to share with us their experience and thoughts. Marco Orsini is the director of this extraordinary action adventure documentary, while Omar Noor and Omar Samar, affectionately known as O2, are 2 world-class athletes featured in this film. So in this Q&A, we will cover 3 parts, from the start, the journey, to beyond the film. So we have our first question to O2. As rowing across the Atlantic Ocean for 3,000 nautical miles is so unimaginable to many people. So what actually motivated you to start this ferocious journey at the first place? So you guys, like, any one of you can start sharing if you have got any thoughts in your mind. Yeah.
Omar, why don't you start?
Okay, well, I'll start because you know, I'm the one that put Omar in this position. I was flying from I was flying across the Atlantic, sitting on the window seat, looking out of the window, staring at this vast ocean, and watching a movie as you do on the plane. And then, you know, the movie ended and I was still staring at that vast ocean, and this kind of idea came into my head: how cool would it be to try and cross that ocean without the use of a sail, without the use of a motor? And of course, the idea was seeded then, and I wanted to do this. I knew that I couldn't do it by myself, and I needed someone to do it. And Omar was just the most likely candidate, the craziest person that I knew that had the same kind of commitment and approach to sort of hard work and training, and was just sort of crazy enough to do it. And so I went to Omar with the idea, and maybe Omar can take it off from here. Like I just called him up one day and I said, "You have half an hour for a quick meeting," and I just showed up at his office unannounced, and that was kind of the beginning of the end.
Yeah, it truly was. I wish that Omar could just focus on watching his film and close the blinds on the plane. There's no need for this kind of action. For me, it was, you know, I had a professional career as a triathlete for many years with one singular focus, the Olympic Games. That was everything that I was living for, really, for 6 years. And I had a bunch of injuries that happened to me, with the last one being 6 months out from the Olympic Games, and that just took me completely out. And that's funny enough, when Omar reached out and we sat down in a room, and literally within 30 minutes, we made a decision. You know what? Let's do it. And that's a very interesting things I think about both of our characters. We like to sign on to things that seem unrealistic, improbable, and then we dedicate our lives to preparing for that. So for me, I always need a challenge. I always need something to strive to. It makes me a better person, I believe. It gives me a sense of purpose. It builds my self-confidence. I forge bonds that way, in very strong bonds. Like Omar and I are literally brothers after what we've gone through. And yeah, so I did it for the challenge, and I did it because it sounded like a really good time at the time.
Yeah, so just from what you have shared, it seems to me that it's more on adventure than maybe more on adventure than on refugees at the first place. So I just wondering, like, how did the focus shift, like, slowly in this journey, that you realized that actually, like, this trip is more than just about sports or about accomplishment. It makes you more relate to the experience of refugees. Like, can you share with us maybe like the changing moment that you found it's so related?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for the choice of any adventure, I think there is always a quote unquote like selfish goal of doing something because it means so much to you, something that drives you, you're passionate about. To me, it was the same. You know, going on an adventure like this, being one with nature and challenging the elements in this way was just something that brought the best out of me, and is an experience that I'd lived before. Omar was a professional athlete. I was a professional adventurer. I climbed Everest, skied to both poles, and so on. And so we'd signed up to this. And as we started training, we realized that we're about to embark on something that's going to be sensational. It's something that's extraordinary. There's going to be a lot of people potentially following this journey. And it makes a lot of sense that we would attach this to a cause, something that we really believe in. And I've always been extremely, being also from the Middle East, being from this part of the world, is something that the plight of refugees and the cause is something that's always in the forefront of our minds and imagination. I've always felt that this is a cause that doesn't receive the necessary attention. It's something that has become people have become desensitized to it from, the media, and it's a faceless issue. And so, we thought, and then there was this amazing, in our minds, we thought that there is some similarity between the journey we're about to embark on and potentially what refugees go through. Obviously, when we went through the journey, with hindsight now, having known everything, we realized those experiences are vastly different. And so we came out of it with even more, dedication to the cause and more understanding of what's going. But this is sort of how it came together in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of echo what Omar said, I think for me on a personal level, I was a bit more detached with the refugee cause than Omar was, living in Egypt, seeing it and interacting with it on a personal level much more. I wanted the adventure. I wanted that pushing the limits, right? And the magnitude of the adventure became very apparent for us very quickly. For me, the part that really made me connect with the refugees and sort of realize how intense of an experience it must be, it is when obviously we had the capsize and we were floating in the middle of the ocean. At the end of the day, when you're sitting there, you are a human being. The nature does not ask where you're from or if you have a country. It treats you all equally, and how insignificant you feel, how powerless you feel, is something that I think that's when the connection on a personal level happens. And then what's most humbling is realizing that, okay, well, obviously at the moment we did not know whether we were going to survive or not. But once the rescue operation was successful and we were heading to coast, knowing that, okay, great, we're alive, we didn't lose any limbs, we're gonna see our family, we have resources. I can't imagine, and Omar and I spoke about this quite extensively, that for refugees, their battle is just commencing. The lucky ones are the ones that just make it across, and then the true struggle begins, and that's extremely humbling.
Yeah, and just one last thing about that. Like Omar was saying, this experience in the ocean really strips you away from everything. It strips you away from the comforts that you have. It strips you away from the people that you love. It strips you from everything that you know, and your life just gets turned. Even sleep, you don't have the privilege of sleep. And so I think that is probably, as far as, two people like Omar and I, who, in comparison have a very privileged, blessed sort of opportunity to not have these struggles, can get to a place where we can feel, a fraction of what refugees go through. And it's very, obviously it was unfortunate that we didn't complete our mission. But at the same time, looking back, we realized that maybe we came out of this with something more, than what we set out to do.
Yeah, that's very true. Like watching the whole video, it just makes all of us so nervous, and the whole journey is just a lot about huge desperation for help, and it's just so helpless without any support. So my next question would be to Marco. As I have come across an article titled "Beyond the Raging Sea, a film that wasn't meant to be made." So this has really surprised me by reading this title. And so I'm just curious, when did you decide to turn their experience into a documentary, and what were the reasons that you decided to make it happen?
it's complicated, but to start off with, I had priorly been working with the UNHCR office in Egypt, doing a campaign with them that we had just finished titled Dangerous Crossings. And I was slowly beginning to transition over to another campaign called Telling the Real Story, which is direct testimonials from refugees, primarily focusing on crossing bodies of water. Omar Samra was in Cairo and had, through mutual connection, said that he had a story that he wanted to share and thought it would make a good documentary. And that mutual connection said, you two should meet. So we sat down in the UNHCR office in Egypt in a conference room, and 3 hours later, I was so excited about this story. I said, I am the director to make this story. And I repeated to him how I saw the story should be made. And he agreed with me that I understood what he was telling me. And we embarked on that journey immediately, because there's always small opportunities along in life that you can actually give an example to explain what refugees go through. And this is a perfect example of that. Here are two men who are well-educated, who articulate themselves well, who are funded by several entities to cross the Atlantic and fail. They have rescue missions, they have all these sorts of devices to help them, and still the rescue operation was difficult, extremely difficult, all the way through until the very end. And you can't, there's no other type of story that you can actually say, you know, if a mother is standing on the shore of a body of water and chooses to get on a life raft with her 3 children, and she doesn't know how to swim, and she has never been in a life raft before, and she has never been in water, she obviously had to make that decision because she feels that she's in danger, staying where she is. And so that impact of this film, of just having that sense of, okay, they chose to go on this journey. Through the journey, things didn't go the way they wanted, and their rescue mission was an incredible story. That in itself is a great story. That in itself is a tense and an amazing story to tell without the refugee component. But it's rare, as I say, to have something that you can actually connect to the refugee struggle, because their stories are identical in the sense of those 10 hours are identical. Those 10 hours, the Omars are not sure if they're going to survive or not. At least they have people that they can connect with. At least rescue vessels and planes are flying above looking for them. So the contrast and the comparison both are so, you know, as a director, I didn't want to miss that opportunity. So that's how this unfolded on my end with them.
Yeah. The contrast that you just mentioned about, like, actually both Omar are well-known athletes, and that's why their rescue is being known, and they're like millions of refugees. They're just like normal, ordinary people who are not really known or under the spotlight. So many of them are just like often overlooked by public, and it's really good to have you three to come up together to produce this documentary to just raise awareness on refugees for a while, to support them. And actually for the Telling the Real Stories, Marco just mentioned, we also have, we'll be providing it in our festival, and all the audiences can actually also feel more refugee stories, their testimonials, after watching our other films. So this one is actually also included, and we invite every one of you to also spare some time to review them. So we will move to the second part of our Q&A, and it's about the journey, and we'll be focusing more about your experience during this trip. So my first question would be to Omar Noor. As I remember, inside the film, you shared that during the rowing journey, you created nicknames for both the ocean and the boat, and even had a conversation with them. It's actually reminded me a lot of the very famous film called Cast. away. So in which I think is Tom Hanks talking to the volleyball and named it Wilson, and it has been like keep talking to the ball to give him like hope of survival. So I just want to ask, could you tell us how this idea of talking with Jen and the ocean appeared, and was it because you have been isolated in the sea for too long and you need some companion, or what's the logic behind that?
I don't think there's much logic behind it, right? I think it's just primal, right? The way it works that Omar and I actually, although we're out there together, we don't spend that much time together because while one is rowing, the other is resting. So you are alone a lot of the time, and you're alone with the elements. And when you're out there in the open ocean at night and the waves are hitting you and you're soaking wet, you're cold, you're hungry. We didn't eat a single solid meal in the first week. You have sleep deprivation. You just need something. You need something to push you through. And like you said, Tom Hanks, it doesn't make much sense when you're looking at it as a movie, but when you're in the moment, you just want a glimmer of hope. You want some positivity. So I nicknamed the ocean Tito, Atlantic Ocean, Tito and Jan. And each session I would say, Tito, Jan, like, come on, give me something nice, be good. And it actually sort of highlights an aspect of my personality. I'm very positive. I'm a positive thinker, and I do believe that throughout my life and career, the power of positive thinking really has taken me through a lot of the biggest challenges. It's a trait that I've used numerous times, and in this situation, that little thing, you just never know what's going to help. And that very little thing is what was helping me get up when Omar told me to go row and persevere throughout the evening. It's a trait that also has helped me as an athlete, right? Because you end up having a lot of challenges as an athlete. And I've been following sort of like the Refugee Olympic team, right? And I've spent some time sort of thinking about like, wow, like what resolve, what perseverance, and also what the power of positive thinking. I mean, these guys don't have, to train for the Olympics, the kind of sacrifice, the level of commitment, the sheer exhaustion at all times. Now compound that with the challenges, the unique challenges that they're facing, and it's like, wow, right? I'm sure they have their Tito and their Jan that they speak to all the time to get them through it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I also actually got very impressed, like when seeing you two experience in the sea, and when we have like Refugee Olympic team that are also striving for Olympics and training so hard, and after they have gone through so many like difficult things in their home countries, and it's like just showing immense resilience of the refugees and athletes after all. So yeah, it's very impressive seeing the journey in comparison to Refugees one. And the next question will be to Omar Samra. You have climbed Mount Everest and the 7 summits on the 7 continents, and also you have made 3 first ascents in Antarctica. So these are all incredible achievements. So how would you describe the level of difficulty of the rowing trip across the Atlantic Ocean with the journeys you had made before?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think they're very, very different. I mean, I'm more of a land guy than a sea guy. I got to find out pretty fast. Find that out pretty fast when I started this journey. The other thing is the mountains and going to the poles and this thing. You have this thing where you can have a very hard, tough day, but at the end of the day, you can have a good meal, you have a good night rest, and then tomorrow is a new day. With the ocean, like Omar was saying, there's a whole lot of sleep deprivation. We're constantly on 2-hour shifts. We never get a full night of sleep. The days start merging into each other. I mean, like I was saying in the movie, unless you're sort of marking on the boat the number of days, you have no idea what day it is. So you get to lose a sense of time. The other thing is that the ocean is very predictable, unpredictable, very much like the mountains. But the difference is that when you're in the mountains and you see a storm brewing, you can kind of try and hunker down. You can try and seek refuge or a shelter. Whereas you're in the ocean in this tiny boat, not being able to move against the current, against the waves, you just brace yourself. Like, you know, there's a storm coming, you know that you're going to go through it. And it's just a matter of how long the storm is going to prevail and what is it that you're going to do in the interim. So there's a big sense of foreboding that you get when you're in this type of thing. The experience feels relentless. It feels that it never ends. There is no respite. But the beauty of it as well, very much like the mountains, you get these moments within, you know, these challenges and within this sort of, you know, constant discomfort. You get sort of, you know, you have the opportunity to have a completely unobstructed view. You get to see brilliant sunsets, amazing sunrises. And like Omar said, we have very fleeting moments where we actually see each other on the boat and get to converse. It's usually at the end of shifts and not during the night. It's usually once a night has ended, which is the toughest time when when you're rowing 8 to 10 hours in the dark, and then the sun starts to break out. It gets a little bit warmer, and there's 1 or 2 shifts where we're on deck at the same time. And those little moments that we get to spend with each other, these fleeting moments become so powerful. And it gives you an idea that you're not on this journey alone. You're actually on this journey with someone else, and you are one unit. And I think that's what I remember in the movie. My mother said when she was going through her mind of what she was thinking as we were out there. She was wishing and she was thinking that, you know, Omar and I are one body. We're one team together, and we will find a way to get through this. So this was giving us a lot of comfort when the boat capsized, when we were in the water, that this would have been a very different experience if we were by ourselves. But it was also a very big sort of comfort to our families, knowing that there was someone out there looking out for us.
Yeah, I believe both of you have experienced so much together as one body, and there must have been lots of exceptional moments that you can't really capture because we all understand that like electricity is very limited on the boat. So my next question would be to Marco, as the director. As we all know that like you guys have really very limited electricity, not to mention about the battery charging issue you have mentioned in the film, and we want to know more about when getting photos and video footages about their experience is so challenging. How did you overcome this issue, or was it a concern to you during the production of the documentary? And yeah, maybe you can tell us more how you pack everything together to make this incredible film to us.
Sure. First of all, I have to laugh for a minute because there was no footage. It all went to the bottom of the sea with the boat. So this was the most challenging part of the film. How do I tell a story that is impactful if there's no footage? If you notice, there is some footage and some photos towards the end of the actual their boat and the vessel, which was shot by the men on the boat and saying, oh my gosh, look at this rowboat in the middle of the Atlantic. Let's take some pictures of this. Thank God they did, because that's all we had. That is all we had. But the most important thing in storytelling is to have a story that makes sense, to have the arc of a story. So what I did was I rented a theater in downtown Cairo and I completely blacked it out. And I shot this as one would shoot a play, like a Broadway play, in the sense of you have your two characters and those two characters are telling the story separately. I made sure that they were never on stage together telling the story, because if you notice, the Omars have a completely different style of telling stories. One is extremely speedy and very fast in their motions, and the other one is contemplates more everything that they say. And so the combination of the two makes really interesting storytelling. And so I don't know if you realize it or not, but the only footage we have is from them practicing. And by the way, they didn't really get to practice much because one lives in Dubai and the other one is Cairo. And every time they went out to sail, something happened and they had to return, or row, they had to return. So those practice shots weren't that much either. So I have footage of them prior to departing in their launch base. And I have the footage from when they were being rescued. Otherwise, I had created footage of them sitting together in the theater. I was able to interview Omar Samra's family in those theaters, and then go to Orlando and interview Omar Noor's family by recreating that same theater, by putting chairs of their dining room chairs and just putting them back and putting a black backdrop. So the idea was, if you have no footage, what do you focus on? You focus on the characters. You make everything else black, and you focus on what the words are coming out of the character. You do a fast-paced edit style, and you bring in a famous music composer like Georgia Cogney, who did Blood Diamonds and has also done campaigns with UNHCR, who did an amazing music score for this film, which, for me, you have the film and then you have the music. And both, if you close your eyes, this would make a great audiobook. If you close your eyes and just listen to their story, you would be mesmerized, because they tell the story in a way that no footage is needed. All you need to do is listen to the words coming out of their mouth. So that was the challenge, definitely. And I know a lot of people, when they were watching the film, and they're also on their phone, and they're also taking meetings, they're waiting for the footage. And I say, no, you have to actually watch this film. And so when people watch the film in a theater, we get standing ovations, we get people crying, we get people who stay for the Q&A. We've gotten great reviews only because the story is told in such a magnificent way by these two Omars.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marco, for I think yourself is a very good storyteller. That's why you can stick everything up to one piece and make it like a very wonderful play. So moving to the question to O2, as you two have both mentioned that it's actually very challenging to stay at the sea for such a prolonged period, especially when you're unsupported by family and friends and not having proper meal and deprived of sleep. So how did this experience help you understand the plight of refugees, and how do you feel about the things that they have gone through?
Omar, do you want to go first?
You go ahead.
Okay.
It's a big question, right?
I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think I obviously because of the Syrian crisis is so close to home, I think I felt at least that I have a reasonable understanding of what people have gone. I know friends that are Syrian. I know people who have been directly affected by it, and it's something that I have an understanding of. But actually, going into the experience myself, just like Omar actually alluded to in the Q&A earlier, I realized that I have very little understanding. I mean, the reason the situation of coming into it is very different. I think we were prepared. We had the best equipment. We did specific training for the venture that we're about to go on, which is obviously very different than a situation of a refugee in this situation. And like Omar said, once we were done, we were saved. I mean, those 13 hours at sea were gruesome, and they were, I would say, very much similar to potentially what a refugee would go through in a similar situation. But after that, after we were saved, even though we lost our money and we lost our passports and we were disconnected and everything, it took a couple of weeks for us to figure out how to get home. And to think about the level of desperation, the need and the will to survive, to be able to go on a journey like that, understanding that once you get there, your problems are just beginning, gave us and gave me a very profound sort of respect and understanding for it that I didn't know before.
I mean, I have to echo what Omar said. For me, like I mentioned earlier in the Q&A, it wasn't as personal, right? You read about it in the news, you get desensitized, right, by the news. You see it all the time, and it becomes almost a backdrop, right? What this did is this put it front and center for me, right? Something that just while Omar was answering, it came to mind, like something as simple as an orange. So we did not have fresh food, right? And we didn't have a single solid meal the entire first week because of seasickness and things like that. So there are similarities, right? And we just wanted something fresh. We wanted to eat a fruit, right? And Omar is quite resourceful. He went through all of our like where we kept all the food and kept on searching and searching and searching and searching. And he came up and he just went like this, boom. And there was an orange. And the joy that you feel when we found that orange, we peeled it, and Omar, like I was rowing and Omar was giving me pieces of oranges, like that basic human desire and need. I think this we felt, right? We felt this, and we can imagine, right? Because it's the same seasickness. It's the same feelings, basic raw feelings. Now the other stuff, like the things that Omar was saying, the backdrop of we make it to the other side, right, successfully, or in our case, a rescue mission becomes successful, and we've arrived. We have friends, we have family, we have resources, right? The thought that that's just the beginning baffles me. Because you're destroyed, right? You're a shell of a human when you hit shore. So for now to have this uncertainty, to not know whether you're going to get sent straight back or what's going to happen to you is baffling. So it is very humbling to me to think that would be only the beginning of the journey. I can tell you one thing: if it didn't start personal, it definitely ended personal.
Yeah, actually, many refugees who are forced to flee their home countries for safety are deprived of basic necessities at sea. And we have also heard of countless heartbreaking stories of refugees telling us the terrible things they have endured in the sea journey, like the loss of their loved ones and maybe severe dehydration and malnutrition, like lots of problems just happening in the sea that are unsupported. And recently, we can see that the pandemic is actually driving more people to risk deadly sea routes. And this is something that we are really concerned about in UNHCR. And I think this movie has served a very good one to raise awareness in this film festival, and especially when we are having an Olympic in July, and it's a kind of echo with the spirits of sports to support people who are on the move while we're supporting athletes. So my next question would be back to Marco. So as you have been the one overseeing different interviews, trying to understand different people's perspectives and what went through their minds in this process, I saw that all the interviewees were actually sharing their feelings very genuinely. So what were the things that you remember the most in these conversations, or which parts of this whole journey or the sharing have left you the strongest impression?
Well, I first want to remind everyone who's watching this, Omar, if you can just swivel your chair so we can see that photo behind you. Okay, this photo there was taken before they went on that journey with his fiancée Fleur. People who are embarking as refugees to go on a boat don't put a picture of their journey before like this to say, off I go. That's the difference. I mean, there are a lot of similarities with this film in the sense of that 2-week journey, But I just want to emphasize the difference between this film and the actual realities that a refugee has to face. And one of the things that, and leading into this question is that, you know, as a filmmaker, I have to be objective in the storytelling. I cannot get involved in the process. But with that said, moms, everyone has a mom. Everyone has a mom back home thinking about where their son is, where their daughter is, how are they today, whether their daughter or son is a refugee or not. Everyone has a mom. And when you are struggling or you are down and out, you're thinking about your mom. That mom is always thinking about their children. And the mother interviews were difficult for me because they, you can see the pain in their eyes. You know, you can see that there is one is very strong and very puts a veneer up and is, you know, does not want to show it, but does. You can see it. And the other one, you know, had to say, I need a break. I need to put my eyelash back on because I'm crying so much. And I'm like, I need a break because I'm crying listening to you. So there is that impact that mothers have. And that for me is I think the glue, the one thing that ties the story together are the mothers, that they share that loss, that even in the trailer, if you watch the trailer in the very end, you know they survived, you know that they didn't die, but she puts that doubt in your mind just a little bit. Oh, wait a minute, I think he's alive. I myself even wondered, did he die? I can't remember. And so it's that mom connection that we all have as humans. That for me was the most impactful story on both sides.
Yeah, Michael just shared about like the moms and the family. Actually, inside the documentary, I also wanted to point that out. There are just many touching scenes related to family. So maybe here just capture one or two here. I remember before Omar Noor, you set off for the journey. You were like talking to your mom on the phone, and then while during the rescue for Omar Samra, you were like sharing that your daughter Tila was actually the person that kept your survival spirit at the moment that you were about to give up. And these are just so impressive to us. And so what I want to ask is, could you both tell us more about how has this journey affected your idea of family, or how do you comment on the importance of having a family or a home that you can return to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very interesting question. I think we'll probably both say different things with the same essence. I mean, I guess we both experienced that differently during the rescue. I think for Omar, and he'll talk about it, I'm sure, like, the first thought that came to him regarding family was at the very beginning. Mine was at the very end. I was so consumed with the rescue and everything that we were going through. But it was this pivotal moment that you mentioned when I was hanging on the ladder and was just about to let go, that it all came to me at once. And it was just a fleeting, probably millisecond, that, the sort of an image of my daughter flashed before my eyes, and it's all that I needed to get sort of this extra, energy to do, what seemed impossible at the time, because we were 13 hours with adrenaline pumping. We were on the back of 8-9 days of sheer exhaustion and sleep deprivation and lack of food and everything. And when I hung onto that ladder, and it must have been for about 4 or something minutes, because I have the original footage of me hanging onto the ladder, and it's 2 minutes long, and I hadn't even made it up, even a third up that ladder. And so I know that even if I get onto a ladder now and I try to do it, having woken up and in just a normal day, I'll struggle hanging for that long. So there was something extra that was driving us. I think doing something, knowing that of course we wanted to survive. There was a feeling that we didn't want our life to end this way, but at the same time, I think it's more potent. I think you have a better fighting chance if you feel that there's something bigger than yourself. I mean, it's not just you and it ends there. There are other people that your lives are connected with, that they would go through immeasurable sort of suffering and pain if you if you know, if something would happen to you. And there's a feeling that you want to be able to tell your story, and maybe your story in your own, on your own terms somehow. And I think, you know, with the journey having started with such a lofty goal of crossing the Atlantic, you know, those two men sort of challenging the elements and getting to the other side, and having it end in this way was something that we were very mindful of throughout, and we just wanted to be able to tell the story. Now that it's done and back, I think it does affect a little bit. Now I understand that adventure and that spirit of exploration is still part of me, and it's something that I have to nurture. But at the end of the day, we understand that the cost more, I think, that is attached to it. And so what it means, as it doesn't mean to stop doing the things that you love or to stop these pursuits, but what it means that you have to do it with eyes wide open. You have to do it very consciously, understanding the in some ways the selfish nature of some of these pursuits, also understanding the challenges that it puts onto other people. And you know, it's not about not doing it, it's about doing it, but doing it consciously. And you know, putting in the time and the energy to bring other people with you onto the journey. And that means sort of involving them into it, and so on and so forth. So it has been a huge learning experience. And when we came back, we spent, I mean, more, I think, before either one of us went on any adventure or did anything, any magnitude. I mean, it's and the reason for me, at least, in doing that, I wanted to make sure that if I do something, I'm doing it for the right reasons, and not just because people are expecting us to go back and try to row the ocean again, or something like that. So it was definitely a huge learning experience for me.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, like Omar mentioned, and actually what Marco mentioned as well, like, as much as you want to, you're part of a social fabric, right? You're part of a family, you're part of a town, you're part of a country, and your actions do affect the people around you. I've always known about this because as an athlete, you must be extremely selfish. There is no room for empathy. There's no room for thinking about others. It is all about performance. You must think about your sleep first, your recovery, your food intake, your performance, right? And the families, at least my family, had to support, to play a supporting role, right? This was very different. This was very different because when the capsize happened, and Omar alluded to that point, is when we flipped upside down, the first two things that came to mind was, no, not like this. And I think that's a very basic human reaction. You do not want to die. I don't think there's a nice way to die, right? But the thought of like, no, not like this, saying what, like another way would be better? No, not like this was just primal human survival instinct, right? And the second immediate thought was, what have you just done to your family? What? For a sense of adventure, for an excitement? And that was very real. I, from there on, just blocked out the family and the friends and everything, and I just focused. The athlete portion of me kicked in, and it was like, okay, goal, survival. All right, if it doesn't get me closer, then I'm not even thinking about it. I'm not spending a single second or energy with it, right? You just realize, when we actually then survived and came back to shore and whatnot, you realize the consequences of your actions to your loved ones. And I think it makes you a little bit more cognizant of that. I think what Omar said is dead on. It is not going to change the fact that you must push yourself, push your limits, and follow your dreams, right? You got to follow your dreams, and sometimes risks are associated with that, right? But moms will be moms, right? And maybe you need to think twice about maybe putting them through some of the things that we put our moms through. I can tell you that, you know, I would think twice about doing another ocean crossing and putting our mothers through that.
Yeah, I believe that family is like the really core thing for everyone, including refugees. And we have heard lots of stories that people are also just concerned about their family more than themselves during those desperate moments. And so, because time is running short, maybe we have to move to the last part. It's about beyond the film. Any thoughts on that? So this question is open to all. So at the end of the film, actually, it writes that the film is dedicated to the memory of those who perished during dangerous crossings. And this is indeed a very powerful ending. In the Mediterranean Sea alone, since 2014, there are more than 6,000 recorded deaths and about 15,000 people missing at sea. This is with reference to the operational data we have in the UNHCR. Many displaced people have no choice but to take perilous sea journeys in search of safety. We would like to know more about your personal inspirations drawn from this journey crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And to Marco, maybe what are the key takeaways from directing this film to you?
I'll start that if you Omars don't mind. There's two endings in this film, if you notice. The first ending is when they are rescued and they're standing on that container ship. For those who haven't seen the film, sorry, I've given away the ending, they live. They're standing on this container ship and everyone, when the audience watches it, they are a sigh of relief, okay? That they have gone on this journey with these two adventurers and the adventurers have made it. In a course of 67 minutes, I have been able to get the audience to feel compassion for these two men who they don't know, who they've never met, by just seeing this film. So why can we not have compassion and care for the hundreds of thousands of people who have no choice but to flee their homeland and cross a boat? So then there's the second ending, which is asking people that question. Indirectly, I'm asking people that question. If you can care for these two well-dressed, articulate, well-placed men, why can't you then care for the other thousands of people who are making this crossing? It's the whole idea of just having compassion enough to care for humankind, for each one of us, to care and to share. That is the whole point of this film. It's not a point of even asking the question of whether they have the right to cross or not. They have that right, period. Okay, people have the right to exist. They have the right to flee danger. They have the right to pursue a better life. The question more is why don't you personally care about their existence? Why aren't you moved about these families crossing over? And so for me, that call to action is first trying to convince people to care, to share, to have more compassion, to donate, to be aware of what is happening in their local communities as well as internationally. It might not be on your front doorstep, but eventually it might be. And who knows, you might be a refugee one day. You never know. So all this film is trying to do is to create some kind of awareness for people to understand that all we're looking for is for you to care and to be compassionate. And I'm just going to do a quick shout out to the Olympic refugee team this year. I believe that this film, being somewhat of a sports film and also connecting to refugees, also this year the UNHCR has developed a sports team both in the Olympics as well as the Paralympics. And I think that's fantastic. After these athletes have gone through so much, that they've actually been able to pull their lives together again and compete in the Olympics. What a dream to have, to actually go from being a refugee into being desolate and have nothing to look forward to actually in the summer of 2021, are we 2021? 2021, yes. Yeah. Competing in the Olympics. So just a shout out to all the Olympic contenders who are on the team. Good luck.
That's very cool. So any maybe sharing from to Omar on maybe as athletes yourself too, and also from this very impressive, extraordinary journey. Although it's like a few years ago, but I think like it's still so relatable today, and you have very vivid memory no matter how many years after.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, one of the things that Marco mentioned is, you know, even the label of refugee creates separation, right? Like I remember, I was diagnosed with diabetes 5 years ago, so very late as a professional athlete, and I remember when people would mention diabetics, right? It is such a foreign, yeah, it is something that happens to other people, right? It only is when it happens to you that you start to pay attention, right? And I think with refugees, this is just I mean, let's not forget, nations are a human construct. You take a picture from space, you do not see borders. There is nothing, right? We're the same, right? So overnight, you could literally be a refugee. Overnight, that is you, and it becomes very personal then, right? So our hope, and you know, I have to give a shout out to Marco because he is an amazing storyteller, and he was able to do a lot with a little. And I think that the main goal for us, or for me at least, is to translate that thought to the audience. That, okay, you related to Omar and I, it is exactly the same thing, right? We are one. We are all one. It is the same thing. We're just human and human. That is it. You know, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, what I would say is I think what this film does and does incredibly well is inspire the understanding of the magnitude of injustice that exists in the world today. And I think that since the movie was made, I think that's only compounded. Now with with the advent of COVID-19, I think the refugee issue has unfortunately been pushed further back into people's minds with other headlines and other stories taking precedent. And I think that's very sad because I think, that says a lot about humanity in terms of how we deal with the refugee crisis is really a direct reflection on how we are as human beings. There should not be neutrality and passiveness in the face of so much injustice that it's happening on such a wide scale and for so many years. And in some ways, this was a very difficult thing for us to go through, but in some ways, I feel very privileged to have gone through this experience, getting so close to the end and being able to live and tell the story. Because Omar and I mean, we both went through something that no matter how many times we tell the story, no one will truly understand what we went through other than Omar and vice versa. And in the same way, refugees are on the same boat, on the same life raft, will say the same thing about the people that were with them on that same journey. And so to be able to get somewhere where we, as we highlighted in this discussion, is not entirely the same as what they went through, but it's as close as two human beings that have, that having gone through this level of struggle, go through and be able to understand it, it's something that is valuable, but it's also, it makes me feel a sense of responsibility that this did not happen for no reason. And we need to, dedicate as much time and effort that we can to, use this story and use this experience and use this film, which is a beautiful film that has been very, very well made, to illustrate this point. And since everyone is giving a shout out, I'll have to give a shout out to DHL because they actually, they were the ones behind this journey. And, funny enough, they really went through great lengths. And again, that's another thing that illustrates the disparity in the experiences, right? So we were also fortunate to have that even when we were rescued, we had the support of somebody that had a global network and the support of UNHCR in getting us out of this plight and being able to also communicate the story. And on the flip side with refugees, it isn't quite the same. So as you guys were talking about the Olympics and you mentioned it a few times on the call, I was thinking about it and thinking, who am I going to be cheering for this year? And obviously you want to cheer for your country, but I have a feeling that I will be cheering for the refugee team just as much as I'll be cheering for my own home country. And I really hope that the Olympics this year goes well and it follows through. And I really hope that people can understand that, you know, like Omar was saying and you were saying, that these are not just athletes, you know, training and going with the pursuit of just like trying to win medals or trying to, you know, get to the start line, but just getting to the start line for them, just like it was so difficult for us to get to the start line to do this journey, just them getting to the start line of something like the Olympics. And I think Omar knows more about this than I do, is just extraordinary. And I hope that the Olympic Commission, I hope that everybody that is you know, working on the Olympics this year does a fantastic job at highlighting how just amazingly inspiring that is.
And can I add to that, Suzanne?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
that, I mean, that's like my wheelhouse when it comes to sports. For me, like, sports changed my life, right? But also sports has changed the course of history in instances, right? It has solved conflicts. It provides like a universal inspiration. It's just such it's a great unifier, right? And throughout history, you've had like sports help wars end. You have it helped combat racism and sexism. It's like we've watched people be lifted from poverty through sports, right? And a couple of the stories that I like through that come to mind, and some people may not know about it, is during the Cold War in the 1970s, the US-China relations were not good. And what's one of the main catalysts that solved it was ping pong. There was the best American player missed the bus and jumped on the bus with the Chinese team. And he struck up a conversation with the best Chinese player. And that is actually what was the catalyst that reunified the countries and opened up the diplomatic relations, which is crazy to me. Or another example is the Jamaican bobsled team, right? Everybody in the world knows about the Jamaican bobsled team, and it's such a basic inspirational story. For me, like towing up on the start line with Olympic gold medalists, it doesn't matter how good of a speaker you are. It doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter what country you come from. It doesn't matter that you're smarter than the guy. Nothing matters. I believe that sports is a great equalizer, right? It gives a sense of purpose. It is such an important thing. And for refugees, even more, to give them the opportunity to build their self-confidence. It forges amazing friendships between people. I have friends from all over the world thanks to my training in sport. And to echo what Omar said about the refugee Olympic team, it is so amazing that it's the second time around, and they're going to be flying the Olympic flag, and they're going to be second in position right after Greece. Like, this is the power of sport. Everybody will be watching, and I couldn't agree more with Omar. You have your team, but at the end of the day, we are the refugee team. They represent the entire world, not just one country. So I'm going to be cheering for them all the way.
Yeah, I think we all agree that sports is a good way to heal, develop, and grow. And in UNHCR, we are actually also supporting refugees in engaging in sports, as it can help them to regain self-confidence and bring people together. It's just you three have all mentioned about the importance of sports. So here we would like to invite all of the people watching this video to stay tuned with us in UNHCR to support the Refugee Olympic team and the Refugee Paralympic team. For those who would like to know more about refugee stories or support our work in UNHCR, you can also visit unhcr.org/HK. Huge thanks again to our three guests here, and we are so impressed and we have learned so much from all your sharing. We wish you a very successful future with all your adventures, no matter in sports or in the film industry for Marco, to be a really great one with all our best wishes. So thank you everyone for joining us.